Welcome to my home or our improvised classroom for the time being. Today I'm doing a quick mini lesson so that we can discover or at least mention some of the traits that are specific to vertebrates. Now when you go to your Google Slides that I shared with you about vertebrates, you have the 4 defining traits that are present in all vertebrates throughout their embryonic stage, and some organisms keep them throughout their life while others are just during that embryonic stage. However, I want to focus on those other traits that we have and body systems that have developed, right? The more complex the animal, the more complex these systems are. So we're going to start with our vertebrates body systems, okay? Now, all vertebrates or all members of the phylum Chordata have something that is protecting their epidermis or their skin. Now, depending on which organism it is, you should already know what type of covering they have. For example, fish usually have hard scales covering their actual body, right? Then for amphibians, even though amphibians do not have anything that is hard, they do tend to produce almost like a slimy mucus around it to keep their bodies moist. They also tend to live very close to water for that humidity and moisture, because it's really important for them to not dehydrate. Reptiles also have scales, but they're not the same type of scales as we see in fish. Their scales tend to be more of a leathery kind, right? Beautiful scales depending on which reptile we're looking at. We have birds. Birds have feathers protecting their body or their epidermis. And then you have mammals that have hair or fur, depending on which species we're referring to. Okay? In your case, you have hair. Well, my dog, which is on the floor, I'm sorry you can't see him right now because the camera is in a fixed position, but he has fur, not just hair, right? But let's go more into the actual body system. So now that we talked about the epidermis, let's look a little bit about the skeletal system or our support system. This is what allows us to move, to sit, to stand, right? Because this is our support system. Now, our support system or our skeleton is an endoskeleton, which means that the skeleton is inside the body, not outside, like we learned that crustaceans and arthropods had an exoskeleton. In vertebrates, the skeleton is internal, so we call it an endoskeleton. That skeleton is composed of 2 main things, cartilage and bone. As you can see in this picture right here, in the cartilage tends to have cells that are further apart. Because those cells are further apart, it allows that tissue to be more squishy and flexible. That is why cartilage is more flexible than hard bone. Hard bone, on the other hand, the structure that it has, all those cells are closer together. So the closer the cells are, the less movement they can have. So it makes it really hard. So that is why they tend to have a fixed structure and not be bendy all the time. Although I gotta say that for us human, that skeletal system actually hardens as we grow up, right? That's why you can see babies that can actually put their toes in their mouth like if it was a pacifier, because your bones are not hardened yet and there's still more cartilage than actual bone or what we call soft bone, right? Which allows for kids to actually also recover quicker from when you have a broken leg or broken arm, rather than a senior citizen or an older person. If they, break a leg or break a hip, it's really hard for them, or harder for them, to recover, and it takes longer time as well, because with time that actually hardens even more. Now, we have, depending on the animal that we're talking about or the actual living organism that we're talking about, we're going to have animals like sharks and skates and mantas. They have hard bone just on their column, right? You're going to see in their fins and especially in their jaws, because as you all know, they're apex predator and they have that hard bite. So, but that's what majority of the hard bone is. The great majority of their body is actually made up of cartilage, which allows them to be more flexible and quick right? Especially sharks when we're talking about them. In humans, we see the opposite. We see that we have way more hard bone than we actually have cartilage. Cartilage is just in specific places like our nose, our ears, in between each one of our vertebrae and in our ribs. Anywhere where bone connects with bone, there is cartilage in between to cushion that movement so that we're not breaking our bones all the time. Okay, so as far as the skeletal system, these are the main points. Now, let's go to the central nervous system, or the command center. The command center is basically composed of a brain, a spinal cord, and neurons or nerve cells. Neurons are in the brain. Nerve cells that connect. Now, this is the communication system in our body. That is how an impulse is transmitted based on this, because of the shape of the actual nerve cell. The communication, every time they touch, that impulse can transfer from one to another, which allows our brain to give commands to our body, and our body follows even before we can actually think about it. So when you're touching a hot stove, you touch something hot and immediately your arm kind of jerks off, right? And you don't have to wait for you to say, oh, it's hot. Let me remove my hand. Because if that was the case, we will burn our fingerprints off, right? But our body does it immediately because the signal travels through our entire body. So our command center is really important, and it connects our entire body, okay? If you see here, this is in a human. Here we have, this is almost like a mountain cat and a dog. So it all very similar in the structure, okay? They have the nerve cord that connects and ramificates to every inch of your body, and a brain that holds all that command center. Okay, muscular system. Muscular system is our muscles. Now, they wrap each one of our bones in the majority of the cases. Okay, here you have a cat stretching, and as it stretches, we can see how the muscles actually contract and expand. That is how we can also move and enhance our active lifestyle, okay? So this is what the muscular system looks like. It actually helps us, it gives us strength, and it protects our skeletal system, which makes our support system, okay? So really important. Here we have the respiratory system, or our breathing system. Now that breathing system, for us, is mainly composed of our lungs, our bronchioles, the trachea, the pharynx, okay, the nasal cavity, and even our mouth. We breathe in, we breathe in oxygen, and we breathe out carbon dioxide. And in that process, it travels through every single cell of our body using the circulatory system as their transportation method. Okay, depending on which animal we're talking about, the respiratory system has organs that look a little bit different, even though their function is exactly the same. On fish, we know that the gills act like lungs. Here we have an axolot, which also has gills that help in the process, although it can also be out of water, so it can transfer that air. Amphibians can also breathe through their skin, which allows them, right? That's why they have to be very close to water and always humid, because we need that they need that to be able to breathe. Okay, so depending on the actual animal that we're talking will be the way that they breathe, but all of those organs are really similar. They might differ in the shape, but they're really similar in function. Okay, really important, our respiratory system. Now, a circulatory system, or a transportational system, this is what actually what makes up our blood and our blood vessels. Arteries, veins, capillaries, all those blood vessels that are surrounding or in our body, covering every organ. This is how all of our organs and cells receive the oxygen that we need, okay? Because we always see them in red and blue, and it always indicates that the red is oxygen-rich blood. So it's the oxygen that is just being pumped out of the heart after coming in from the lungs. And then you have the blue that represents the oxygen poor. That is the one that has already traveled through the entire system and now needs to go to the lungs in order to get a replenishment of that oxygen, okay? Then we have something that might be new for some of you, the endocrine system. The endocrine system is mainly our hormones, okay? These little enzymes that kind of control and determine the balance and the homeostasis in our bodies, okay? We're gonna see that part of that will be the thyroid. You have our pituitary gland. You have our pineal gland. The pancreas is a big part of that system. In females, the ovaries, and in male, the testes. These are all hormone or organs that produce hormones in order for our body to be balanced and to have what it needs, okay? Then we have the excretory system and the immune system. The excretory system is the organs that are in charge of getting rid of the waste. So you have the kidneys there, right? They act as filters for our blood, making sure that everything that is not going to be used or reused in our body that becomes waste has a ways to get out. Our bladder is part of that because that's part of our urinary system. And also our intestines, right? We got to poop it out. We eat it in, we got to poop it out if our body doesn't need it anymore. So that is our excretory system. Here we have in a dog, and I think this was, well, no, these are both a dog. You have a male dog and a female dog, as you can see, right? There's a difference here in the way that we get rid of urine specifically. Okay, for our immune system, this is the system that is in charge of our defenses, our white blood cells, right? We're gonna be the tonsils and the adenoids are part of that system. Our bone marrow is part of that system. And throughout the entire body, we have these green little dots that are representing our lymph nodes. This is what keeps, you know that when you extract blood, you have the red liquid, right? And then you have almost like a clear, thick, dense liquid that kind of surrounds it, goes in the bottom. That is our lymph, right? Liquid. This is part of your plasma. This is part of your white blood cells. And this is really important to keep us safe and healthy. This is what is acting right now, or that people are trying to strengthen throughout the entire time right now, as in keeping your hands clean and making sure that you are taking the precautions that you need with right now. We have to fortify that immune system so that it can take care of us. And finally, and last, we have the reproductive system. Okay, the reproductive system is in charge of producing those sex gametes or sex cells that we know. In boys, those are sperm cells, and in girls, that will be your eggs, right? So of course, depending on the male, these are the male organs, right? We have the seminal vesicles, we have the urethra, the penis, and in females, we have the uterus, you have the ovaries, cervix, the vagina. That is part of our reproductive system in humans. And this is a cow here, this is a female cow, okay? We have that the system looks slightly different, however, it has the same function, to produce those sex cells so that there can be a next generation after this one. Now, more on reproduction and reproduction strategies in our next video. Now, have a great time. Can't wait to see you. God bless you.